we've talked a lot about how individuals are influenced by these Time Lords. There is some mention in the literature for Time Lords influencing collectives, like nations and things of that nature. And I wanted to perhaps get your thoughts about this. Are Time Lords specifically for the individuals, or would a collective like a company or a nation even, or some other collective, also be influenced by Time Lords?
Seems to me you could also do, well, and they did, do mundane profections. They certainly used mundane profections. So and what they were often interested in was how events were embedded in the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions that happen almost every 20 years. And so what they did was they tried to correlate events on Earth with certain kinds of conjunctions and certain kinds of signs. And when you had a conjunction, for example, let's say there was a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, they would there was a certain time they would cast the chart for, and then they would do mundane profections from Gemini for the next 20 years, because that's how long the conjunction period lasts. And then they would try to interpret what was going on in the nation at that time. So maybe if the profection came to the 8th house of the chart they had, it was a dangerous time for the nation. Or maybe financial concerns would be really important if it came to the 2nd house. So that's the kind of thing that they would do. That was really done by the Persians, so far as we know. The older Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, they didn't do those mundane profections. But all of a sudden, with the Arabic translations that appeared in the 700s, all of these techniques appeared fully formed, brought over to Baghdad by Persian astrologers. So they were taking natal techniques and applying them in this new kind of mundane astrology.
Very interesting. Dr. Dykes, we're going to take a 1-minute break here in a little bit, and when we get back, I would like to ask you about some of the philosophy behind the system of Time Lord. Welcome back to the Psychic Viewpoint. We have here Dr. Benjamin Dykes, philosopher, translator, scholar, astrologer, and a whole lot more from bendykes.com. Well, Dr. Dykes, so far we've been talking about, we've been defining what Time Lords are and discussing some of the different systems, but people have to be asking themselves right now, where do I fit into all of that? I thought that I was the sheriff in Stephen County, and now all of a sudden I'm a donkey following a carrot on a stick. Even the president, where's my free will?
Mm-hmm. Let's deal with the free will issue really quickly, and then maybe we can look at some of the bigger picture. Traditional astrology, when we look at things like Time Lords, for example, and I say that Venus rules your life for a certain amount of time, it uses what I call a determinism of types. That is to say, the chart can't tell you every single detail about what's going on, but it can only tell you the types of things that are happening and the types of things that will go on. How you handle that and how you can steer that is up to you. Now, not everything is in our control. Lots of things aren't in our control. But the chart, for example, can't tell me how many times I'm going to chew some food or how many steps it takes to the mailbox or anything like that. And there's lots of leeway when I say Venus is going to rule your life for the next 6 years. Well, a lot can happen in 6 years. There are a lot of choices that you can make in 6 years. Nevertheless, the period will be Venusian. So this doesn't take away from our ability to choose at all. So I guess that's the first thing I want to say. But it is humbling to know that we are part of a bigger, intelligible picture. So there is something humbling about it as well. I think one way to understand some of the ancient attitudes towards this material comes from Plato. And the idea in Plato is that our changeable material world, where we live our lives, has a kind of substructure to it, an eternal substructure made of these special eternal entities, which sometimes he called forms, sometimes he called ideas. And if you like, some of the Platonists identified this structure with the mind of God, or the divine mind, so that we live in time, we live in a world of change, we live in a world of life and death. All of that is contained eternally, so to speak, in the intelligible divine mind. What we do in astrology when we cast, let's say, a birth chart, is we are getting a time slice. We're getting a time-based representation of something that is eternally in God's mind, or in this cosmic mind. What astrology does is it's a way that the divine mind uses to communicate to us what is going on and what our lives are about. So the astrology is a kind of communication, and in fact, Plato talks about how the configurations of the stars are a way that the divine soul speaks to us. So one way to look at astrology is it is a communication about our who we are, where we fit into the universe, where we fit into the divine mind generally, and also what things are really possible for us, given the fact that we live in this world of change, and so on.
Well, it seems, I tell you what's humbling for me, Dr. Dykes, is this notion that by being born, I've stumbled into some sort of divine automation system. You know, that instead of, the divine mind, I used to think that until I read your books, Dr. Dykes, I used to think that the divine mind, woke up every day and said, well, I wonder what Stephen Lewis is doing. Let me check up on Stephen. And here it come to find out, the divine mind can influence me in a number of ways without even thinking about me. I wanted to get your thoughts about these systems of Time Lords in terms of perhaps this being some sort of an automated system for the divine mind. I just wanted to get your opinion about that idea.
Well, to go back to Plato for a minute, what Plato describes in this book of his called the Timaeus, it's his book about the creation of the universe. It's a very late book, and it's the one where he talks about each one of us having a planetary angel and the divine soul communicating to us. All of this stuff is included in that book. And what he says is that one of the purposes of this world of forms and inserting this kind of orderliness into the world is that it makes life intelligible. And to say that the world is kind of like this automated system, that was the phrase that you used, you could take that in a bad way. We're just in this automated machine. But what Plato was saying is that by introducing this kind of intelligible, meaningful order, including through astrology, it benefits us because it gives us the benefit of knowledge and self-knowledge. And that is a good thing. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. That's the Platonist view of things. But it means that you are being invited through astrology to participate in the life that this intelligible order or God's mind has introduced into the world. There are limitations on what each of us can do, simply because we live in a world of time and matter, but we're being invited to participate with that mind and consciously be happy through our own self-knowledge and deliberate choices. So it's a kind of invitation for Plato.
Fair enough. That's a very helpful way of looking at it.